All right, hey everybody, this is great. All right, I'm excited for this. Thanks for coming. I feel like we might be one of the last panels before cocktail hour, so we'll try and make this lively. All right, so we want to talk about a small subject called the future of media. And I feel like I do have an all-star panel here to dissect this. We're going to try and make this kind of an open-ended conversation. We're going to have really understand, I think, through the dimensions of changing consumer behaviors, changing technology, kind of the impact that's having on our lives and our industry. So I think just to start us off, I know we did a little bit of introduction, but we'll go down the line here. You guys can tell, the team here, just what you guys are doing, what you're working on, and then we'll just open it up and have a robust discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. I'll start it off. So I'm Eric Perko. I'm the founder of Apollo Partners. Apollo is a full-service, fully independent media agency doing everything from brand to performance to traditional and digital across the full spectrum of media, including media planning and buying, execution, analytics, but also product development. So we've been around for about 4.5 years. We have offices in Oakland, California, where I live, but also Austin, Texas, and New York.
Awesome. Hey, I'm Scott Kozub. Thanks for having me here. I am the VP of Product at Experian Marketing Services. My remit's predominantly product strategy across the full portfolio. The thing about Experian that's sort of beginning to change is we're really moving away from just being a data company to being more of a data connectivity company, being able to help power advertisers to use both data from Experian, but also partner data. Also thinking about new ways that we can support sort of non-data addressable capabilities, like through things like contextual. So it's awesome to be here. Thanks very much for having us again.
Thanks again, Jay and team. Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Johnston, the Global Head of Sales for Dianomi. Dianomi is a content amplification platform. We specialize mostly in the financial services and premium lifestyle verticals. Our global headquarters is in London. I'm based in New York. Our team is kind of split between the two. So it's great to be here. Looking forward to talking about some future of media.
Awesome. All right, well, let's kick it off. So we talked a little bit about consumer behavior and thinking about how consumer behavior impacts just the changing role of how consumers are actually consuming media. So thinking about that through the lens of fragmentation. We're seeing that consumer behavior is becoming more fragmented and that consumers are starting to consume that content across more screens and, really starting to think about how they are consuming through the lens of attention. When you have so much content coming at you, even when you're watching one screen, you have another screen that is coming and, giving you other messages. So, through your lens and thinking about your business model, how can media companies better adapt their content and distribution strategies to cater to these multiple screens that are vying for our attention?
Yeah, I can start us off. I mean, I think in so many ways that is no enlightenment for anyone here is that media and marketing has gotten a lot harder, which for us I think is really encouraging because you have to be really skilled and have a very strong point of view and a lot of great experience on what media channels are going to work. But brands used to be able to just buy success in many ways, and I think that that's not necessarily the case whether it's fragmentation or data privacy rules are making reaching your target audience that much harder. But I think it's definitely an opportunity for brands who are really going to dig in and figure out what are the right ways to get to first-party data or really accurate data.
That enter that cultural zeitgeist and that get talked about. And so, just kind of building on these points, obviously we have kind of more data at our fingertips, to help us than we've ever had before. And we have, kind of contextual signals and fantastic ways to start to create these moments that matter. But, how do we feel about, kind of this, through this lens of fragmentation, kind of leveraging these tools to create something that feels holistic, and creating something that feels, kind of more eventized rather than just, kind of reach, one eyeball at a time.
I think we were chatting when we caught up about, given a lot of the change that's happened recently, what's old is new again. And tactics like contextual targeting, as you alluded to, Jay, are kind of coming back in vogue now. And yes, I think retail media networks are here to stay. There are some great ones. I think what you're doing with Intuit is a really interesting one. Mastercard is sort of ahead of the trend there. I think you guys have been in that game for a while. Others obviously entering. So I think that will be a piece of it. But something else I think that's really important is consistency in all of your messaging wherever you're showing up. It's often been said that a consumer doesn't know the difference between a brand ad or a conversion ad, a performance ad. They just know it as your brand, as MasterCard or whomever the brand might be. And making sure that you're getting the credit you deserve for all of that great experiential advertising you're doing when it's time to maybe have that harder hitting ask further down the line.
Makes a lot of sense. So maybe we'll just venture into the topic du jour here, which is, we're talking about technology. Let's just talk about AI, as we do here. So again, through this lens of consumer behavior, through this lens of contextuality and marrying media and creative, there's this promise of Gen AI, of being able to start to create synthetic content and being able to marry that with a robust data set, to make it contextual. I guess, what are you guys seeing and how are you guys leveraging it, or how are you guys thinking about it?
Yeah, I can go first with this one. I think one of the things we've started looking at through the lens of AI, we've got a massive data set that we sit at with Experian. And so being able to start to drive insights off of that data set through AI and understand different cohorts of people and how they behave and really what resonates with them, I think is one of the keys to helping unlock being more relevant with individuals, and being able to apply that and say, like, for the creative treatment, it's going to be different, right? Like, your advertising can be in the absolute right spot, the message can be totally off, and it misses the mark, right? So being able to think about how tools like that play into it. And we've even started looking at how can AI begin to inform, increasing performance against traditional media buying capabilities like context, right? You mentioned that's new again. Absolutely. The question is, if you can use AI in computer modeling to say, it's not just about the words on page, it's what type of content do people that interact with those words typically consume as well. And we're showing that AI can help find uniqueness. It can help move beyond sort of that standard buy you might make on a context buy to say these are the other types of content that really resonate with these types of individuals. And using that from a modeling perspective, I think also plays into some privacy capabilities as we start to think about that. Even starting to think of how to do more geospatial indexing, right? How do you understand what areas have sort of over-index, under-index to particular types of data, and then using those as sort of broader targeting capabilities as you think about consumer privacy.
Yeah, we're jumping in head first and testing things constantly, and it feels like every week we're seeing some sort of demo that is incredibly impressive, and you're like, wow, that's almost scary. I think it's exciting in a lot of ways, and all of the capabilities we'll unlock will be significant. But it's also, I'm very interested to see how the human element of all of our professions gets maintained. We had a funny example of this last week that wasn't related to our work, but it was an interview for someone we were hiring, and all her communications and everything leading up to the actual interview was really impressive. And when we met her, it was oh, I think that was all written by AI, and you put it into an AI checker, and it 100% was. And I think it was a good small example of, how do you, you can't replace the humanity of us and human intelligence in its entirety. And certainly right now, everyone jumping in, it is going to enable a lot of change, but how that really takes hold over the next decade, I think will be incredibly interesting.
I was chatting with a CMO recently who told us, he's told his team, when you think about tools like ChatGPT, don't think of it as having Einstein on our team, think of it as having 1,000 interns on our team. And I think when you put it in that context, it helps you create the right use cases for how to use these tools efficiently, scalably, and in the right way. So one popular case I think we've seen a lot is from a content creation perspective, going from that blank page to the first draft, which you can now spit out very easily. And that's not good to ship, but it's really good at that first draft, which you can then obviously hone, further edit before it's ready for kind of final version. But yeah, I think there's obviously a lot more that can be done, but thinking about those sort of more time-consuming tasks that you don't want to be spending your time doing as a team that you might be giving to, say, 1,000 interns.
We were recently saying you need to start bringing a bunch of interns in that have been using AI because that's what they're growing up with and having them teach us about this stuff. So
they might be the best users.
Yeah, I mean, it's meant, I think, in its best space to try and alleviate some of that rote work, right? Some of that just hard charging, kind of very time consuming, but maybe low strategic work to allow us to elevate and start to work on higher value strategy. We were doing a little bit of a analysis, just thinking about kind of permutations of creative and kind of dynamic creative optimization, kind of through the lens of B2B lead gen, and just thinking about kind of the different segments that we want to reach, the different products that we have in the different markets. And we started to get to permutations, kind of in the hundreds of thousands to millions fairly quickly, which would I think for humans to do that would take quite some time. But I'm curious to get kind of your take, I guess, on what you're seeing kind of in the marketplace and kind of the demand from marketers in wanting to not only leverage the distribution and content that you have, but also being able to marry that content and doing dynamic content optimization, kind of with the contextuality. And are you finding that there is a need to start to create kind of dynamic creative optimization, and that will just be kind of a standard ask moving forward?
Yeah, I think for me, it's come up a lot more with brands who are saying, look, I got people that are landing on my site. They're coming to my homepage. They're interacting with my mobile app, and I have no idea who they are. How do I deliver the relevant experience and capture that opportunity? And so there's definitely a desire to sort of have more of that content recognition or dynamic creative capability to sort of be able to say, like, look, I might not know exactly who they are, but if you can connect them to data points that we can use to better optimize the landing experience, like that's going to retain the sort of the brand value and interaction with those consumers.
Yeah, we're actively testing. I don't feel like we've landed it yet, but if you roll the clock back a year, like we were just jumping into this stuff. So I think the progression is incredibly swift. The ability to take really targeted segments and speak to them in a really targeted fashion with creative is unparalleled, and I think really exciting. And when we were able to compare this to examples when we weren't employing that, the performance is significantly better. So I just expect that to get more and more the case in a short period of time.
I think it just allows you to go that one level deeper. So not just an A/B test of, does content A or content B perform better, but in which environments sort of, on publisher A in desktop versus publisher B on a mobile device, and even deeper than that. So I think it's just understanding what the right combinations are to a deeper degree than we have ever been able to do before.
Yeah, and so then I think, what we're talking about is, how our jobs are shifting a bit. I think that first shift, I just remember a time where we spent, kind of a year doing all the planning. You launch it, and you're done. And then maybe a year later, you understand how it worked. I mean, now it feels like the real work happens, kind of in campaign. And I think you were kind of just mentioning, this idea of just real-time feedback. Just on a side, I worked at Samsung before Mastercard. I think they were an engineering company, very data-driven. Didn't fully understand, kind of how marketing worked. We were a big sponsor of the Oscars. And I remember every year, we were actually the first advertiser. We were in kind of spot 1A, and without fail, after that first 60-second spot ran, I would get a call from somebody from Korea asking me how the campaign's going so far. And I think we are at the point where we are almost able to start to answer and have some insights, within the first minute of a campaign rolling. And that is a really interesting, kind of idea for us to understand, kind of what is the workflow now, once you flip on the switch, and what is it that we're all doing, the types of questions that we're going to need to answer in real time.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we joke sometimes that the real work starts when a campaign launches, but it feels like we've had the ability to have actionable insights almost immediately for a bit now, whether it's social listening or, keys on how performance is going and like where optimizations might sit, and just going to accelerate more and more. I mean, everyone is expecting feedback immediately and expecting change immediately, so I definitely agree.
Well, I think, too, people have started to look at what are the metrics that we think we're going to measure as a result of this, and being able to baseline those before a campaign even goes live. And, to your point, social listening, like what happened on the number of tweets, what happened to the number of likes, like all of that stuff can now sort of be brought in real time, and you start to say, like, this thing is having sort of an immediate impact against those key metrics that we had. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're right in that it's so close to real time now in terms of your ability to see and analyze data. The challenge almost becomes not over optimizing your campaign. I was at Meta prior to Dianomi, and we used to say don't day trade your AdWords account if you don't have to, because you could really make drastic decisions off of a limited set of data that might not have necessarily been the best for the long-term results of a campaign. So that's just probably the one counter I would say there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, just because we have all these capabilities doesn't mean you should always do it right away. Yeah. And you have to have really great creative instincts and have a strong point of view on like what the brand wants to say. Because remember when the iPad came out, like the whole world freaked at how they named that, and they were unwavering, and now it's like part of culture. And like if they had listened to the feedback right away and changed it, it wouldn't be called an iPad now. So.
All right, a slight pivot. And I kind of want to go back to maybe one of the points that was mentioned earlier. Just really thinking about, kind of consumer trust. It's great that we have, kind of all of these new technologies and new data and new insights. But the reality is that, when we take a step back, I think kind of consumer trust with brands, unfortunately, I think is at an all-time low. And partly, there's just the rise of, kind of these tools like Gen AI that allows for deep fakes and, just the rise of misinformation and disinformation. And there's so much content out there that is just really tough to break through. And so I guess, how are you guys thinking about, kind of the role that your companies play in driving trust, kind of back with consumers and the brand and kind of thinking about just brand responsibility?
I can jump in on that. I think, again, leveraging the large set of tools that are out there right now. Certainly, we work with a lot of the brand safety partners, the kind of IAS double verifies of the world, and I think they provide a very valuable service. But again, at the risk of going overboard, I think a few brands have now almost gotten so scared to show up in what are still really high-quality environments, really good journalistic content. But in an example we saw from a brand recently, we saw a bunch of these ads on really top-quality sites that were failed by IAS, and it was for negative financial news. And the negative financial news it was failing for was a company had released earnings that were short of expectations, and their stock dipped 5% that day. If you're a consumer or a financial professional, that's still pretty important to know. And as a brand, you should still have a message to tell when that is the news. So I think it's not necessarily running away from what are still really important environments to be showing up in as a brand.
Yeah, I mean, the trust piece it couldn't be more important. I mean, it's kind of like the basis of any brand's business. And you have to be really careful with this Intuit product that I mentioned. It's been in the works for about 2 years, and the main executive sponsor of it is the head of legal and privacy, because it was so important about this is a new thing for the brand to be using their data in a more actionable way, and so we had to make sure that we were getting it right. But so brands, I think, need to be constantly cautious and constantly conscious of what they're doing and how they could potentially turn their customers off, but also have this like point of view of bravery and like doing what's right for the brand and not constantly apologizing if someone has a bad reaction, so long as they're like really sure that this is the direction of the brand they want to go and they're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing I might add on top of that is just making sure that, even as you're thinking about from a brand working with, additional providers, data providers that might have third-party data, making sure you're really sort of picking people that have sort of put privacy consent at the forefront, to make sure that, like, I think the closer we're connected to the consumer is a critical component. And, the days of scooping up data with a pixel are about beyond us. So, finding people that really have that relationship and have opted in for the consent.
Yeah, just to add a little context from our side, we've started to broaden the definition of brand responsibility, to really 3 core pillars. So we have, kind of the kind of the core anchor of brand safety that we've been talking about. But kind of building on that, we also feel just as strongly about, our ability to capture people's attention and really leaning into the attention economy. And by the way, it's linked. If you have really strong ability to manage for brand safety, and we happen to have a 99% brand safety threshold, it tends to manifest itself in being in the most premium, high attentive content. And that high attentive content works more efficiently, works really powerfully, where we find that we tend to need less reach or less impressions or less frequency to make that impact. And when we have less frequency, by the way, it's less money, and we burn less carbon. And so that, kind of that third piece is about sustainability, and being, kind of responsible through the lens of, kind of doing well by doing good, and realizing that, kind of digital media actually is pretty carbon intense. And so for us, kind of brand responsibility is really kind of all those three pieces together. And I'm just curious a little bit, just your take, if you are seeing kind of others kind of lean into the sustainability space, and really understanding, kind of the impact that digital advertising has on, kind of on the environment.
Yes, we're definitely seeing it. And when we caught up before as a prep call, like I think I was saying, my hope is that as it evolves, that it doesn't just become this performative badge-like system of like checking a box to say that we're acting in a more sustainable way. I love how Mastercard is leading, because I think that will really drive standards in the industry, and you will have a playbook to say, like, this is how you buy media more sustainably, and this is how brands need to behave, because that's typically what really drives change, is people knowing how to do it and do it well.
We've been looking at it as well, but I'm actually curious for you, Jay. Like, how have consumers responded to that? Like, I mean, you've got that brand relationship, and you're saying we're doing these types of things. Like, what's the feedback in?
Yeah, and quite frankly, we are doing this not necessarily for consumer sentiment. It's not even consumer facing. It's just, we feel that we need to walk the walk. We have a Priceless Planet coalition, so it's something, kind of sustainability is something that we believe in, and we're working with, kind of Conservative International to, kind of do reforestation. So that's our consumer facing program. But we didn't feel that we could authentically, kind of get into that space if we weren't, committed to net zero ambitions. And so, that's really what's driving it. And by the way, we may be a little different than other companies. We don't have factories. We don't make cogs. Marketing happens to be one of the major contributors inside Mastercard of our Scope 3 emissions.
Yeah, I think it's a great focus for you guys as an organization. I think the industry as a whole needs to adopt more of it. But your point, ad tech has been sort of a key driver of carbon emissions, and so it's something I think we all should be thinking about.
A lot of the brands we work with promote the efforts that they're taking as companies to be more sustainable and to help the environment. And then there's an irony if they're doing that in non-sustainable ways, promoting it digitally and so forth. So, I think what we do is not necessarily programmatic, which we hope makes it more supply path optimized, but certainly there's still carbon being emitted there. So understanding that, I know, Jay, you'd mentioned that video is the most carbon intensive for the advertising that you guys are doing. I think understanding where there might be trade-offs, and ultimately, I think it will be another line on the scorecard that any brand, any marketer is looking at. You'll have your sort of performance, you'll have your brand safety elements, I think you'll have your carbon score as well, and understanding if one is really good performance, but also highly carbon emitting, is that an acceptable trade-off or not? So I think it'll be a decision that every brand's going to have to make.
Yeah, and it really takes the whole ecosystem, all the players to getting down the same page and do it together. Kind of creating the right standards and really thinking about how to marry these things, because right now they are in conflict. Again, we know that from video to hit our goals, we just need to figure out how to do it in a way that's responsible, and it requires all of us to do it. So. I think we got a few more minutes. So why don't we take ourselves home? Ron, we'll start with you. We'll just do kind of a little bit of a speed round. Just thinking about kind of, as you guys head into the second half of the year and thinking about kind of the year ahead, what are the top three things that you guys are focusing on as it concerns, kind of just the future of your company and the future of media?
I think top three for us would be thinking about new creative formats, ways you can engage your audiences, new insights. What data can we bring to a partner that they don't already know about themselves and their own brand? So things like, how often is your brand or your CEO being mentioned in the news relative to your competitors, and in what sort of context and what kind of sentiment? So new insights. And then the third, I think, would be new partnerships. And that's probably why we're all here to some degree, is figuring out, what can we do better as ourselves as a company? And then when you start to reach those limitations from a scale perspective, who are the best partners that can help us get to that next level?
I'd say for us at Experian, we want to continue to make sure that we can provide this ability of connectivity and being able to reach people. As we see new fragmented spaces emerge, different addressable IDs coming online, but thinking beyond that, right? Thinking as well about how do you help inform contextual and make that more connected. So that will be a sort of a key focus for us. I would say, the privacy focus for us is very real as an organization. We have relationships as a bureau with people, and we want to really sort of make sure that we're really focused on, that diversity, the inclusion with financial responsibility. So we will continue to think about consumer privacy at sort of the forefront. And I'd say like the last area for us is, really just continue to say how can we help support more ability for people to action with less data movement, right? That we've been so focused on moving data around, and I think there's a lot of new technologies that are emerging that just make that a bit easier, so you can still support things, and hopefully that plays into sort of a scope 3 reduction as well.
3 things I'm excited about. One is consolidated ways of buying fragmented media, whether it be digital video or retail media networks. There's so many options, and that whoever solves like bringing it all together in a very premium way, I think will win. Measurement is something that we're constantly excited about and pushing on. I mean, Apollo. One of our main flags is about eliminating waste, whether that's waste in resources, but also like waste in reporting and focusing on what really matters. So stronger measurement solutions across the media spectrum. And then I kind of have like a counter to a lot of the conversations. I'm continually more excited about out-of-home, like tangible media and things that are real that live in the world. I think our out-of-home is poised to have like a really strong comeback, and brands that embrace that, I think, just get it in a different way of knowing what is going to drive success that people can see, and it's something that lives in their communities. So,
awesome. Ken, Scott, Eric, did we solve it? Did we solve all the
it's
industry
done.
issues?
Yeah, it's done. Yeah.
Job
Thanks,
done.
everybody. This was fantastic.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much.
Thanks.